welcome to another exciting episode of PC Voyage. I'm Diana McLean.
And I'm Rainey Laviolette.
And today we're going to have some different segments.
That's right.
Yep. And one of them is going to be with our favorite guys, Glenn Trim and Ernie Savoy, on this new PC.
And then right after that, we've got Keith Davis coming in with the Bits and PCs doing PK Zip. So we're going to launch right now into Glenn and Ernie.
So you better know.
Hello, I'm Ernie Savoy,
And I'm Glenn Trim.
and this is this new PC.
This time we're going to put in a tape backup drive. We have the components from our kit laid out on the table, and as you can see, we've already mounted the rails necessary to put in our type of chassis. This tape drive is made by Colorado Memory Systems, and it can hold a tape that we have in the case here that will handle either 120 megabytes or 250 megabytes with compression of data stored, and it'll put it all on one tape. So if you have a drive that's under 250 megabytes, you can back it all up on a single tape. One of the other features of this drive is that it will handle multiple tapes. So if you have a larger hard drive than this, you can still back it up and just changing one tape, just like you would with a floppy drive. Right now we're going to open up our case and get started.
While Glenn's doing that, explain a little bit how this works. This drive is actually going to connect in tandem with our B drive off the floppy controller. And that's where the data transfer is going to take place. We load software up, and the software, when it starts, will actually cue the devices, and if the tape drive responds, then it will write the data to the tape drive. So
Now we're going to mount this on the bottom because as the lowest unit in here, it's going to be the least activated. So we're going to take our front plate out, which should just pop right out of here. Okay. Now we're going to have to take our floppy drives and slide them out some in order to access the cable connections in the back of the machine. So we're going to put this in, get it into the tracks. You can't see what I'm doing.
there you go.
That's in the way, that's why. Okay. And again, it just snaps into place. So we're going to slide this out and lay it down out front so that we can access our cable connections.
And the way this works is this is a special cable made to go with the drive. One end connects to the floppy controller, and then our floppy cable connects directly to this cable. And the other end of the cable, of course, connects to our tape drive. So Glenn, if you do
We disconnect our floppy cable from the controller card, and we plug that into this. And again, red stripe to red stripe, so we orient that properly. Connect it snugly. This end will go down to our tape drive, and the small tail will go right back on the way it's supposed to, onto the controller card. So all we're doing is just kind of leapfrogging from one cable to another. We then will take this and connect it onto the back of the machine.
While Glenn's doing that, talk a little bit about the tape. There's several different tape formats out there. The QIC, quarter-inch technology, is by far the most popular. They started a few years ago with 40 megabyte backups, and it's since grown all the way to 250. What's allowed that to happen are a couple of things. One, the use of compression software, and two, just the better density available on this format of the tape all by itself. This is very similar to an 8mm tape that you'd use in a VCR camera. About the same size. The only difference is instead of being 8mm, it's quarter-inch technology. It has pressure heads inside of it, spring-loaded, and also has a tensioning tape. So the technology that we're using in our VCRs, electronic magnetic media, is the same in both environments. The one big difference is on these tapes, you'll notice there's a metal plate on the back. That's put there for two different reasons. The most obvious is to give it some stability when it's locked into the cabinet so that because of the density we're writing very, very small tracks across the tape. And the other thing is just for general protection and keeping at least one side of this tape very solid. It's very thick plastic all the way around. When we put it in there, he'll automatically seek the beginning of the tape. That's the logic in the drive. And then he'll begin writing information if the tape is formatted. If not, The software, it has a format utility just like you would for a floppy. And the reason it became popular is if we even put just 120 megabytes on this tape, it costs about a third of what the same media would be if we did it with 144K floppies. Plus, it's very, very fast, and as you can see, it takes up a lot less room.
Now, as with any other drive, we have to connect a power cable connection, and there's a standard connection on the back of the drive. We'll connect that the same way we would any floppy drive or hard drive connection, and make sure that that's seated properly. Now we can take our floppy drives, slide it back where it belongs. Make sure we're not binding any of the cables, and snap it into place. That sounded good, huh? It must be hitting something, but I can't see it.
Oh, there it goes.
Okay, that's it. Now we're going to take our blanking plate and put it in the front again so we don't have any loose RF wattage floating around the world, interrupting other units. And then when we put our case back together, that's going to seal up our front, and there'll be a plastic plate in front of that.
I'll put the power on and load the software up.
Okay. Okay, so we got the front plate back on. Just a little aside here, you want to save these blanking plates that come out of this thing in case for some reason in the future you decide to take that drive out of there again. You'll have these to put back into the machine. We're all set to go. Ready to power it up?
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a whirl. Well, the fan turns. That's good news. Let's see what happens.
I'm going to move over to the keyboard.
Okay.
And,
At this point, we're going to get ready to load our software. There is a special set of software that comes with the machine, and you need that to access the drive itself.
Okay.
It's not like a standard floppy drive. It doesn't work directly off DOS. So as soon as we're ready, and he tells me we're up because I can't see the monitor from here.
Go ahead.
Okay. We're going to put the disk in, and Ernie's going to load up our software, and it does require software drivers to operate this drive. This is not one of those type of drives that will operate directly off of DOS.
good. Yep.
There's the read. Very
Yep.
good.
And there we go.
Okay, once the software is loaded, we will then insert the disk. The disk will have some diagnostic work done to it before any software affects the drive. It'll hunt down and find the start of the tape every time you put a new tape in. Are we set on?
Yeah, we're in the middle of the install. Install. We're taking the auto configure option. He'll go out there and find the addresses, the cable leads, everything that piece of software and the logic on the tape drive needs to find. Install tape drive in one of the following computers. Skip that, that's for specific. Do you want to install the backup scheduler?
No, not on this one.
Okay. This software even has an automatic backup scheduler that you can set up a batch job for, or an auto exec to read your CPU clock and automatically kick off backups at certain times of the day or several times a day.
I do use the scheduler at work, but I wouldn't be using it where this computer's going to be going because it's not going to be running all day long.
Okay. And it says here, our tape system is successfully installed. Please send in your buyer registration card.
Well,
And we're all set to go.
that's all set.
It created a directory called tape on a hard drive. You can put
Okay.
the tape in.
Now, when we put the tape in, there's going to be a positive lock. It'll actually snap into place. You'll feel that. Now, if you listen carefully, you can hear this. It'll start working itself.
It's going to locate the beginning of the tape, and from there on we can start a backup, start a restore if we have stuff on tape.
Now, before we do anything with this tape, we obviously would have to format it. This is a brand new tape and hasn't been done that way, so we have to format the tape before we get going. But other than that, we're ready to throw the case on this puppy and take it home. It's all set to go.
Okay.
There's our upgrade for a tape drive.
Yep.
And for this new PC, I'm Glenn Trim.
And I'm Ernie Savoy.
Well, we want to thank Bert and Ernie for this new piece. Oh, sorry.
Well, Glenn and Ernie.
Glenn and Ernie.
They did a great job, didn't they? And now on to Keith Davis with PK Zip.
All right.
I'm not sure if he cut that or not. I wasn't sure.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Bits and PCs. Today we're going to talk about archiving files. And archiving files means taking a lot of files, putting them together in one big file, and storing them on your computer as an archived file. And this serves a couple of purposes. One is it makes everything quite a bit smaller because the archiving utilities remove spaces and a lot of repetitive things that are in files and are able to shrink them down quite a bit. And they also take a lot of files and put them into one big file, and it's a good way to store data and programs and files on your computer. Now, you don't do this generally with large programs, but it's a good technique to use for data files or small programs and small COM programs. And I'll give you an example of how this all works. And it's good to know this for a lot of different reasons, and one particular reason is if you're using your modem and you're logging on to bulletin boards and you're sending files back and forth, it's a lot easier to send one file of, say, 50,000 bytes than it is to send 10 or 15 individual files, one after another, one at a time, which total quite a few more bytes than the archived file would. And it also saves disk space and all that. And I'll give you examples here of how that all works. And now to do that, I want to, on the screen here, I'm going to bring up a calculator. Let's see if it's on there. Okay, we got our little calculator there, because I think we might want to add up our some numbers here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our DOS directory here, and let's bring up some big letters on the screen, a little easier to read. And let's do a directory of all the batch files we have here in the DOS directory. And we've got quite a few of them. Let's do that one more time. We've got quite a few batch files here, and as you can see, a lot of these are very small, and these are sort of sorted in order by size. But these are all the batch files that are in the DOS directory. Now, let's say we wanted to take all of these, put them into one file, and store them, put them on a backup disk or something like that, or if we wanted to transfer the data to another computer. Now, just real quick, there's a little data on the screen that's interesting. One is that we have 28 files. There's 28 batch files in this directory, and they're taking up 12,334 bytes. So our goal here would be to archive these into one file, which would be quite a bit smaller than this, and also take up a lot less disk space. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that a small file, like a lot of these here are, will take up at least, they will take up 2,048 bytes of disk space, no matter how small or they are. Meaning this file here that's 139 bytes, and that's the whole size of the file, still takes up 2,048 bytes of the hard drive space. So you can see that having a lot of small files takes up more room than the size of the files. So let's take and use an archiving utility called PK Zip. And if we type PK Zip, we get, and that's all, we get a list of instructions here. And this is kind of confusing. There's a lot of switches, they call them, and a lot of different things you can do in archiving files. But it's actually a lot simpler than it looks. And now the command we're going to do, and if we look at the bottom of the screen here, we're going to say PK Zip. And now we're going to specify the file name of this archive file and the location of it. And if we don't specify another drive or directory, it will save it in this directory, but we're going to save it in the RAM drive. And let's call it batch, B-A-T-C-H. And PKZip will assign a .zip extension to it. And we're going to say star.bat. So we're going to want to save all the files that have a BAT extension into a zip file or an archive file on the D drive called batch. And let's hit enter, and over they go. So now if we go to the D drive and we do a directory, we now have a file on the D drive called batch.zip, and it was 12,000 and some bytes. It's now 8,400 bytes in size. Now the other thing we can do a lot of things here once that file is created. We can take a look and see what's in that file, and we can say pkzip-v batch. And this will give us a directory of all the programs that have been squashed up or archived into that file. And let's do that one more time. It's a little longer than one screen, so we can pipe it through the more filter, and that'll show us one screen at a time here. And what this is saying, that here's a file over here on the left side of the screen. It shows the original file length, and it shows here the size of the file after it's been archived, the percent it was archived, and the file name is way over on the right. And it also has a date and time thing on here. And you can see that small files don't really shrink up too much. Some are stored without any changes at all. And the utility will use different methods of compacting files. And as we can see, there's several methods used in just these files here. There's shrunk and imploded and all that. So what this says down at the bottom is originally we had 12,334 bytes. We have 28 files over here on the right. It says 28 files. And back here to the left, it has compressed these files down to 5,882 bytes, or shrunk them up by 53%. Now the actual file is a little bit bigger than that because it does contain a directory and some other information. So now if we take a look at this one more time, let's do that again. And let's figure out how much space all these batch files here, these small files, would have taken up on the hard drive. So we bring our calculator up here, and we have 28 files, and they were using, each file would use 2,048 bytes of disk space, or 57,000 bytes of disk space, as we can see up here. And even though the files themselves only used 12,334 bytes of data, they still took up quite a bit more disk space. And now that it's archived down, they're only taking up about 8,000 bytes. And it's a good way to store the files. Now, how do we get files out of these once they're in them? We can unarchive all the files at one time. That is to say, there's a whole list of files, and we can then extract all the files back out so that they can be used. Or we can selectively take out files one at a time. You can use wildcards, and then you can also add files into it. And there's many other things you can do. And let me say at this point, too, is that PKZip is one type of archiving utility. It's a very common one. It's used very commonly on a lot of bulletin boards, and people use it on their home computers to store information. But there's several other kinds of archiving utilities around, too. They all end up doing pretty much the same thing. They take a lot of files, put them together in one file, and remove a lot of the space that these things take up. So we see we have this file called batch.zip, and it takes up 8,492 bytes. And if we want to remove from this file a particular file, and let's take a look at it one more time. Let's pick one to take out of here. We have one file called prp.bat down here. And let's extract that file out. Now we say pk unzip because we're unzipping from the file called batch. and we specify the file name prp.bat. And now if we do a directory here, we now have that file out in the directory, and we can use that file if we want. For instance, that's that file the way it runs. Now what else can we do? We can also add files into it. So let's add another file into it. And by the way, one thing that's important is that the original data that was stored in the zip file is not lost. It's not extracted out and lost. It's just expanded out to the disk. And as you can see, we have these two files now on the screen. The batch file, which contains several files, and the one particular file. Now if we delete prp.bat out of the directory here, we can see that it's gone, but the original batch file is there, and the compressed version of prp.bat is still inside the archived file. And there, of course, there's a way of of deleting it out of there too. But now let's add to this a file. Let's take and add, let's say pkzip-a is a switch to add to our file, batch, C drive /autoexec. We're going to put the autoexec file into it. We're going to add it to it. And it's now saying we're updating batch.zip, and it's adding the autoexec, and does it very quickly. Of course, it just did that. So now if we do pkzip-v and we take a look at that file, we should have another file in there now. And at the very bottom of the list, it says we now have autoexec at the bottom right of the screen, and we have 29 files in here. Now let's say we want to delete a file out. We can say pkzip-d from batch. And let's say we want to get rid of this other file called format.bat. And that should delete it. And that says deleting format.bat. So get familiar with using archiving utilities. And that's it for this week's Bits and PCs. We'll see you next time.
Hi, welcome back. Now we're going to give you the address in case you have any questions or comments, or
if you want one of our fancy PC Voyage shopping lists for computers, just send us a request to the address that we're going to give you.
it gives you everything to look for in buying a PC.
That's right. And also makes you eligible for our big software giveaway at the end of the year. So if you have any other questions or comments, or if you want one of these, just send us a request.
And you might just win.
That's right.
Hello and welcome back.
You know, Keith was just telling me that I don't think Tim's going to be here tonight. He said he's having some sort of a computer problem. So I don't know what we're going to do now, but the lights are still freaking out.
You know, and to make matters worse, I'm getting real upset with Chip. I mean, my show?
Cut everybody.
Cut?
I don't know what the hell is going on.
Captain, the engines, they're fading fast.
Cut?
I think I know what the problem is. Okay, everybody, let's have a little meeting. I'd like everybody to leave the room down the hallway here. All right, we gotta have a meeting here. Everybody gather around. We're having a problem here that, as you all can see, listen, Chip's been screwing up pretty bad lately. I think we're going to have to seriously talk about disconnecting him.
What? Come on.
I know it's drastic, but we got to take some steps.
You sure there's no other way?
Isn't there another option?
There's not much else we can do.
How about rehabilitation?
can't look at the camera.
The camera. It's Chip.
Oh, no.
Let's get him.
Let's get him. You're not gonna replace me.
Well, that's it for this week's show. I will see you all again next week. I don't need no stinking hosts to run this show. Who do they think they are dealing with, anyway? Oh, they chopping broccoli. Chopping broccoli. Oh, they chopping broccoli. Chopping broccoli. Oh, they chopping broccoli.
Well, now it's time to say goodbye to all our company.
PC Voyage.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
Isn't that great?
And I'm Randy Laviolette
And I'm Diana McLean.
And
See
we'll
you next time.
on PC Voyage. That was good. I like that. That was good. You did good that time.